to a Friday afternoon edition of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Cast, you're here with you, riding relatively solo yet again. Jake has the day off. He is on vacation. Jake will be back on Monday. So it is mainly just me. Of course, I do always have my good man Kyle Manthe with me running the board. So we'll have Kyle on for a little bit today. But it is a Friday edition of Mic'd Up to wrap up the work week. A very warm day in the capital city yet again. Another excessive heat warning. It is a billion degrees outside. I'm happy to be indoors in an air-conditioned studio. I hope every one of you listening right now is somewhere indoors with air conditioning as well. If not, and if you're somewhere where it's actually warm while listening to this show, stay hydrated. Water is your friend. Because it is like surface of the sun levels of hot outside. We have a jam-packed edition of the show for you here as I get rid of another weather tangent. It is the first padded practice of training camp for the Kansas City Chiefs today. They have the pads on today. We will give you the updates from training camp, including 3 players who left with injuries. We do not have any updates on those players as of yet, but we'll discuss who went down and just how did everyone look on the first day of padded practice and who is still not at training camp after the first day came through where I kind of thought maybe he does finally show up, and he did not. We will look at that today. We're going to talk about the next steps for the Big 12. Colorado, their board unanimously voted to move to the Big 12 yesterday afternoon. You heard that live on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan and me because I was doing crosstalk at that time, so I was part of it too. So what's next for the Big 12? Do they just get one more team to 14? Do they go 3 more teams to get to 16? What does that look like? We're going to look into what are just the next steps for the Big 12 in terms of conference realignment, seeing what they're going to do. And also, who might those teams be and who might they be targeting for that next phase of realignment? Because they are not staying at 13. The Big 12 is not staying at 13. At least one more team is coming. We will look at that on today's show as well. We will hear from several members of the Kansas City Chiefs. We will hear from head coach Andy Reid and offensive lineman Trey Smith coming up in the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. And then in the 2 o'clock hour, we hear from, on the defensive side of the football, linebacker Willie Gay and safety Brian Cook. We hear from them as well. The Royals do begin a series with the Minnesota Twins tonight. It's the 3-game set with the Twins. A Twins team that the Royals are 1-9 against this season, including the only other time they played at Kauffman Stadium being an 0-3 sweep to kick off the year. We'll preview that series, look at it, maybe sprinkle in some trade deadline discussion as well as a potential trade target player has a specific suitor attached to him now. We will look at that, all that as well coming up on today's show. And then coming up at the bottom of this hour, Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network is going to stop on by and join me to chat all things Kansas City Chiefs. But where we begin today on Mic'd Up, it is the first padded practice of training camp. And it was a day that the Chiefs did not come away unscathed. When the pads come on is a very interesting day for training camps because that's when you can start taking more away from drills and highlights and things like that because there's actual contact. We're playing something closer to football. Without pads, it's just an entirely different game. There's such a lighter level of contact. There's barely any contact at all. It's so different that it's so hard to take things away when it's an unpadded practice. When the pads come on, Jake and I have discussed this a lot, the biggest change is in the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line, you really start learning things when the pads come on. Which part of that today, because I want to bring it up as quickly as possible, the Chiefs worked on their run blocking and pass protection today. Apparently, Trey Smith and Juwan Taylor were just mowing people over during practice today, which is just awesome. That right side of the line is going to be a behemoth to run behind. But that is the importance of putting the pads on. That's why I especially have put so much emphasis on today was the first day of padded practice. The pads have come on. What does it look like? How is it, What do the players do? What do the players look like? Because it can be so different and it can create some changes and some differences with that first day of pads and going through the rest of this week. And guys that stand out without the pads on, if you hear them stand out with them on, that is a better indicator of their positive progress than anything else. Justin Ross still was getting buzz today. Had multiple good catches in practice, ran some good routes. That's a positive sign for him. I still don't know what he might end up actually being for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the fact that he was able to show up, the fact he was able to show out is important and does actually matter in terms of the potential he has with this team going forward. I did say there were some injuries today. 3 players left practice with an injury today. Linebacker Drew Tranquil, he had to come off the field and eventually had to ride back to the facility after he suffered an injury. Tight end Jody Fortson suffered an injury to his right arm that could be significant. We don't know yet. We haven't heard back, but he was in a lot of pain and went down pretty quickly with the little bit of video that was shown from training camp today. And then Mike Dana left with a calf injury. When we hear from head coach Andy Reid coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, he will give his own little updates about those as well. But that is all we know at this time. Hopefully all those guys are going to be okay. But those are the 3 training camp injuries from today. But we are now on July 28th. Training camp has now been open, at least for Veteran Report Day, for a week. It has been a week. There is still no Chris Jones. He has not shown up. We have not heard much out of him or his camp. And head coach Andy Reid mentioned earlier today, he has not talked to Chris Jones in a few days and does not know when Chris Jones will show up. When we talked on this program to Matt Derrick on Tuesday, today was the day when I talked with Matt, was his first day to look out for if maybe Chris shows up. It's the first day of pads. This is when the work kind of this also kind of viewed as the day of like, all right, work's getting serious. The real work is starting because we're getting the pads on. We're getting into the harder contact, more aggressiveness, a little bit more energy exertion. This is when practice gets real. This is when what gets real. And so Matt, thought of the idea of maybe today would be the day Chris Jones shows up. He's still not here. And my, deadline I set earlier this week, back on Monday, was August 1st. I said he should be there by then. He'll have paid $550,000 in fines by that point. Well, he'll have accrued that many. I believe he doesn't actually pay them until he shows up. They could say, like, when you show up, you would then have to pay because then you get the one number it's going to be rather than he's paying $50,000 every day. So they're accruing. And I thought maybe that would be it. It gives you a couple padded practices to where maybe Chris goes, all right, I need to join the boys for solidarity. I don't know. We have not heard a lot of updates on this contract dispute for the Chiefs and Chris Jones. The biggest thing continues to be this. Chris Jones will eventually show up, and he will play this season. He is under contract. If he doesn't play this season, his contract tolls, and he doesn't accrue a year, and he's still with the Chiefs next season. So, at some point, he is going to show up, and he's going to play this year. That part is no worry to anyone. Chris Jones will be on the field this season for the Kansas City Chiefs. It is in his best interest to do so. But the longer we go without Jones showing up, without him, coming to the forefront, seeing what he's going to do and figure out the plan, is where things do get interesting. What is the end game here in terms of when he feels it's been enough time to finally show up? Because, in his mind and in the perfect world for Chris, it's I get my contract extension done. sign on the dotted line, and then I walk out to training camp. And he would be welcomed back with open arms by players and coaches and fans alike. But I just wonder at this point now when he starts to consider when he should maybe just show up, contract or no contract. Like I said, August 1st is kind of the day that I'm still sitting on. That's still the day I really think as the calendar turns to the next month that he might finally make a decision. And he might just say, hey, I've been gone for, 11 days. We'll think what it's going to be. At that point, like I said, if he showed up on August 1st, his fines would be $550,000 because he would have missed 11 days of training camp. I don't know what that means to him because Jake and I talk about this all the time. We live in a different financial world. To us, we say, wow, you're being fined $500,000. Why are you not there? Like, every day is $50,000. The fact of the matter is Chris Jones is making $28 million this year. Now, taxes and what have you probably change that, and there's probably some real specifics of what his take-home pay is. But $28 million is what he's getting, his contract, his salary cap hit is this year. So to him, even if it gets up to $1 million, that's a drop in the bucket to him. So from a financial perspective, it's getting gaudy. But given what this man's making this year and what he's made in his career, he can weather it. And so I don't know. I make these comments about, the fines getting big and how much he's paying in fines. I truly wonder how much of an impact that has on him and how much he really takes that into account. This entire situation, contract disputes are they are what they are, and they can be a little messy. That's just what they can be. That's just what they are, and it's a business, and it's dangerous sometimes when you have to view it this way, and it's a difficult thing to deal with. Like I said, I feel like the Chiefs and Chris Jones will come to an agreement. What that agreement is, I don't know. But I feel like an agreement's going to be come to. And at that point, things will probably get smoothed over a little bit. I just can't imagine with Chris Jones specifically that he is going to stay staunch on a line the Chiefs won't cross. And that line might be $30 million. We've talked about it a lot. That $30 million might be the number Chris is looking for. And if it is, the Chiefs probably aren't going there. And that's where this impasse could get to. But I don't know. I sit here and I wonder, and I have no ill will towards Chris Jones when it comes to this. I've said that plenty of times. Like, there is no ill will for Chris Jones when it comes to this contract dispute. Because contract disputes are what they are. Guys want to get their bags. They want to get this is likely the last big payday Chris Jones will ever get in his NFL career. Like, this next contract, not like this one specifically, not like, if he doesn't get paid by the Chiefs this year, he won't get anything next year. But this next payday, this next contract he's signing will be the last big one he ever signs. And that's why there are these difficulties. And that's why there are these issues and negotiations and figuring out what you want to do and figuring out the plan and figuring out, what, taking his time to try and get this done and willing to withhold his labor. And I mean, if anything, he also doesn't have to be out in the heat. Like, that's a benefit. If I'm Chris Jones and I want my money, you think I also wouldn't mind paying a little bit extra money to miss some days being out in the very, very awful weather happening across the middle of the middle of the country right now? I would do it in a heartbeat. So hopefully we get an update on Chris Jones when we come back here next week. There's still nothing new right now. And this was the first day that I was like, maybe there's a chance that this is when he breaks the holdout and he shows up to camp and reports with his teammates. One day of pads, he didn't do it. But those next few days, when everything starts to get more wear and tear, it starts to get, more rigorous, more strenuous. Maybe he sees his teammates talking about it. Maybe he realizes maybe he wants to be with his teammates, support them as they go through the rigorous part of training camp, a tough Andy Reid training camp through this weather. And maybe just from that perspective, that alone is enough for Chris Jones to say, you know what? We've made enough headway on a contract. I feel we've made enough progress on a contract that me showing up doesn't harm any of my potential leverage. And I can just show up here, do training camp, be fine, be with my teammates, and make it work. Maybe that's what Chris Jones does. Maybe that's what he's trying to do. But overall, at some point, he will show up. But as of now, I really don't know when that day will be. We'll take our first time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, there's been a rash of training camp injuries to big stars across the NFL. We'll look at the latest with that coming up next. Remember, as always, you can join in on the show on both our text line, 785-272-9429. And in the comment section of our YouTube live stream, go to youtube.com, Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it as we march closer to 300 subscribers. You can comment as well. A couple things I want to get to. One, for the 785, Christian's my paying to dodge the heat. Yes, exactly. I think that or at least if it was me, I'd be cool with sitting out a little bit too if I could afford it, if it meant a few less heat training camp practices. I'm with it. And then to our guy Vance on the text line, Vance says, if they're haggling over a couple $1 million, it really doesn't make any sense if you can get a $500,000 in fines and not bat an eye. To the one point, I kind of agree with you, Vance, to that. That's why, honestly, at this point, I think the haggling could be less over the AAV like between 28 million and 30 million. I think this might be actually coming down to guarantees and length, which at times can be a bigger sticking point than anything else. Chris Jones might be willing to do 28, 29 million a year, coming down from 30, something like that. And the Chiefs are like, all right, cool, we're good with that as well. But the guarantee structure could also be at play here. And that, when it comes down to that one is rarely ever a couple million on the disagreement. And more importantly, guarantees are everything, because your career on one play in the NFL can be over in the blink of an eye. And sometimes guys, they will fight to the death over guarantees on a contract. And that will be a bigger sticking point than anything else, because they want to be protected. And so there's also a chance that maybe that's the issue. And the Chiefs are willing to say, hey, we'll give you 4 years, 111 million, 110 million or something like that, get nearly 30 million in average annual value, but we're only going to guarantee like 60 million or 70 million. Well, Chris Jones ain't taking that. He's not going to take nearly $40 million of the contract not being guaranteed. So that's kind of the other nuance to this subject. It's just a chance there's also some haggling over length and guarantees, which then the actual like haggling over AAV is completely out of the question. And other problems here. So that's the other aspect I think gets kind of lost in this of what they could be haggling over. I feel like that might actually be the other big sticking point is guarantee structure and how the guarantees are going to hit and what money is going to be guaranteed to him. Like I said, who knows? Hopefully we get some. Every day, I hope we finally get the news that there's a contract and Christians is showing up and our long national nightmare is over. But at this point, I really don't know where the end in sight would be. With training camps, though, opening around the NFL and happening around the NFL, everyone's getting closer to being in pads as well. There were 2 significant injuries that happened yesterday across training camp. One was Joe Burrow and his calf injury. He went down on a non-contact calf injury play, appeared to be grabbing at his calf that already was in kind of a protective sleeve. The Bengals have not released a massive update, though their Twitter account made a nice joke about telling people to stop calling to offer up their calf muscles, that Joe's going to be fine. I think based on that, and also they're just trying to calm the waters, and a little bit what Zach Taylor has said, I don't think Joe Burrow's going to have any significant calf injury, but it's also worth noting we haven't heard anything on that yet. So listen, I'm a Joe Burrow guy, and we can say all we want about, it's easier to beat a team when they aren't at full strength. The NFL is more fun and games are more fun when star players aren't hurt. And Joe Burrow is one of the top ascending young quarterbacks. So hopefully he is okay as well. And then Jalen Ramsey got traded to the Dolphins this offseason. He went down with a knee injury, had to be carted off. He's having surgery this morning on his meniscus. He will miss a significant amount of time, though an exact timetable for his return is not set yet. So some major injuries at training camp. So that is never fun when big guys get injured, but hopefully the rash of injuries kind of calms down and we can get to more healthy runs the rest of this training camp going into the preseason and getting into the regular season in just a little over 8 months. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, Kent Swanson, the KC Sports Network, will stop on by to chat Chiefs. Welcome back into Mic'd Up on this Friday afternoon. Jake has always this habit of saying it never feels like a Friday. This one definitely feels like a Friday to me. My week is done. My week is over as soon as 3 o'clock hits. And boy, am I excited to get to chill out and relax because it's awesome. Though I spend most of my weekend watching the Kansas City Royals play baseball, so it probably won't be a relaxing weekend. I don't know why I did that to myself. Please none of you judge me. But right now, we are going to talk a little more about the Kansas City Chiefs, a much more fun product in the city of Kansas City. And to join us in chat, all things Chiefs, we are joined right now by Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. The KC Sports Network, those guys are doing incredible stuff at training camp alone, just in and of itself. And they just put out great content always and all the time. You can follow Kent on Twitter at Kent_Swanson. Kent, first things first, how are you handling just the heat in this part of the state with the fact that it's like hotter than the surface of the sun the past few days?
Fulton, I went and walked the lot of my job the other day. To feel that heat, and it is absurd. Like 94, like a Kansas City and a Kansas, you can look at 94 and be like, that's not bad. The real feel is just absurd. Like this is unbelievable.
It's absolutely insane. I cannot imagine having to go, like, as part of my job, walk outside. I am forever grateful that my job involves sitting in an air-conditioned studio for my entire purpose of my day. I feel for every outside working person right now.
Well, that's good to know, Fulton, because like when you first started talking, it sounded like you were quiet quitting on air. Like you're just like, I'm done for the weekend. And I lost it until you clarified 3 o'clock because it totally sounded like you were just like, I'm done.
Listen, Jake's not here. We take things a little bit easier. I could consider knocking off. I just imagine, to obviously do a segue here, imagine how we feel about this heat and then having to practice in full pads and a helmet in this heat. Chiefs training camp going on right now. First day of pads up in St. Joe. Where I kind of want to lead off first is almost kind of in the negative front, the injuries. Drew Tranquill, Mike Dana, and Jody Fortson all left with injuries today. From almost kind of a broad spot, thinking of those three players, if any one of them, and hopefully they're all back pretty quickly, nothing significant, but if any one of them ended up having to miss significant time, who do you think of those three being injured would be the most significant?
So we have Tranquill, we have Dana, and who was the third one?
Jody Fortson also left with an injury today.
Okay. I think it's probably, that's a good question. I think it's probably Mike Dana. I mean, we've seen this team operate without Drew Tranquill at the linebacker core. In fact, we're seeing the same linebacker core from last year with Drew Tranquill as the addition, even though I think he's a huge asset to this team. Dana is a big loss because of the versatility and the ability that, he's shown to play along the interior in some sub rush situations, how he plays the run. how consistent he is and how many snaps he's eaten up. I think Dana would be the biggest loss of all of those of those three, even though I think Tranquill can make a huge impact.
I've been very high on Drew Tranquill just from the fact that I think he adds something that the Chiefs linebackers core has often missed, which is coverage sets. But I think Mike Dana is a very good point. So we've seen what it looks like for this Chiefs pass rush without a guy like him or just missing any sort of pieces. With Mike Dana specifically, if him being healthy and if him being a part of this team and putting in kind of that context, where do you think he fits into the pass rush rotation this year with the fact that Charles Omenihu got added, Felix Udike-Uzomah got drafted, it's another year for George Karlaftis, Chris Jones is going to be where he is usually, Turk Wharton hopefully is back and healthy at some point relatively quickly. Where do you feel Mike Dana slides into this pass rush rotation, and how important do you feel his role is to the overall success of the pass rush for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I mean, he's a top 3 edge for this team, I think. Karlaftis, Omenihu, and Dana. You know, in sub-rush situations, I anticipate you'll see a lot of him being utilized. Him, Omenihu, and Karlaftis on the field with Chris Jones a lot in, you know, some of those sub situations. He's a big piece. And he's not a guy that's going to ever be a 10-sack player. He's not, you know, the most dynamic as a pass rusher. But his value is in his versatility and his consistency. He's really good in the games, the stunts, the twists, so he can help free some guys up a little bit there. He can still get after the passer a little bit as a rusher, just not, you know, to the same level that some of these other guys are able to. He's a really sneaky, valuable piece to this defense. And if he were to miss time, his versatility would absolutely be missed.
Moving from the front of the defense to the back of the defense, there's been a lot of different discussion and notes coming out about the different defensive backs playing. You know, Trent McDuffie, he's looked, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, and all that. A big name that's come out to me that I've been surprised to see the glowing reports, but positively is nice to see, is Nazeeh Johnson getting a lot of run with the ones and getting a lot of praise from Steve Spagnuolo. What have you heard about from Nazeeh Johnson? And more importantly, does it feel like he could actually maybe get a role going from almost special teams exclusive last year to maybe breaking into the cornerback rotation this season?
So a little backstory with Nazeeh Johnson. When we do our draft guide every year, Craig Stout, who also writes with me, is on the KC Laboratory podcast as well. He built a metric and built a model based on cornerback athletic testing to kind of help identify a profile that that has a high hit rate regardless of the round. And what he found is there is some athletic threshold that if our hit are a high indicator that a cornerback will be able to contribute in a significant capacity at a very high clip. And that's, again, a reminder, regardless of round, Nazeeh Johnson hit those metrics. He was a tier 1 cornerback athletic tester, which means that there's a high propensity for him to be a contributor regardless of the fact that he was a 7th round pick. Last year, obviously, didn't crack the rotation at the cornerback position. He saw significant time as a special teams gunner, and I think he's a lock for this roster regardless because of his special teams value. But this this athletic profile that he has shown a propensity to, translate at a very high level to significant contribution at the cornerback spot. So this position, him himself, I'm not surprised based on the athletic profile, just based on some of the stuff that Craig was able to uncover. And if he's able to take a step on the defensive side of the ball and become a contributor, that is just a ridiculous embarrassment of riches that the Chiefs would have at the cornerback position if they're able to add another guy like that on day 3.
It would be absolutely insane if Nazeeh Johnson can become something. And also, just in a different sense, the 2022 draft class then becomes it's so much even more impressive because out of that one, you could potentially find a way at some point to have 3 legitimate contributors out of the 7th round in Isaiah Pacheco, Jalen Watson, and Nazeeh Johnson. That alone makes an impressive class. But the fact your 4th round pick in Joshua Williams has been productive. Depending on what Brian Cook and Sky Moore do, how they add to it. Just looking back on that draft class now and kind of where every player seems to contribute, is that far and away, as of this moment in time, the best single draft class of the Brett Veach era?
It's one of the best drafts in recent NFL memory. For any team in the last 20 years, it's one of the best. And it keeps getting better. Like what this team has been able to identify, you're looking at, I mean, you can go up and down the roster. Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, hits, very obvious hits. If Sky Moore takes a step, if Leo Chenal takes a step, Brian Cook is starting for this team. Like it keeps getting better. Like we look at last year's draft class fondly, and we should, because we haven't even got into some of those day 3 gems that you just got done talking about. But they got significant contribution from a lot of players last year. But it looks like those roles are even expanding, and some players are primed to continue to cement their value to this team. You know, like Sky Moore started slow, but still played a sizable role. It looks like he's primed to take a bigger role. Leo Chenal came on really strong late, and I think he had his best game in the Super Bowl. So you see some guys that still have some ascension to them. I think everyone outside of Darian Kennard is looked upon very fondly, and even Kennard, he's able to be a key backup along the offensive line. I think that's a big win for this team too. I think the arrow just continues to point up for a historic draft class that was a significant factor in them winning the Super Bowl last year.
Kent Swanson is our guest here on Mic'd Up on the Flame Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Kent helps cover the Chiefs for the KC Sports Network, and also hear him on the KC Laboratory podcast. And also follow Kent on Twitter at Kent_Swanson. Moving to the offensive side of the football here, there's been a lot of questions about the wide receiver room for the Chiefs, and deservedly so, honestly, given what they're rolling into this season with. First things first, the Kadarius Toney injury. Hopefully he's back by week 1. But on one hand, this is something Jake theorized before he went on vacation here, was maybe you put him on the PUP list to start the year no matter what. Save him for the back half of the season. Treat him almost like you treat Jerick McKinnon at times. Don't really use him early in the year. Save him for the back part of the year. And then that way he has more chance to be healthy and at full strength for the important games at the end, because as we all know, the regular season is just a means to an end for the Chiefs at this point because of their playoff success and championship aspirations. Is something akin to that of maybe intentionally delaying Toney's return and saving him for the back half of the season? Is that something you think the Chiefs should at least consider going into this year, even with kind of the names that are in their wide receiver room?
It's definitely something they can explore if need be. You know, it's tricky for me to speculate too much on, the timeline, the development with that. But, I think there is potentially, with what you've seen to this point with him health-wise, it might make sense to try to, maybe take it a little bit slow when it comes to, when he gets back. I don't know if it's point blank putting him on PUP list. And I want to check the rules on PUP list if he's even eligible to come back this season if you put him on PUP because he technically practiced. I want to look on a few of those. I'd look at a few of those rules too. But I think, if the receiver room's running well, if Rashee Rice and Sky Moore are taking steps, that's a huge step in allowing Kadarius Toney to get fully healthy and have him in the best position for the stretch run. What they do strategically with the roster obviously will be worth monitoring and how they want to approach that. If he wants to be on, they act like if they want to put him on IR, they have to carry him on cut day and then put him on IR to have him eligible to return, stuff like that. But I think it's kind of contingent on what the rest of the receiver room does and if they feel comfortable the timeline for Kadarius Toney's return.
With that receiver room, there's been more than a few names been popping up here and there early on in training camp. And sometimes you have to just try and parse through what's actually important to recognize who's doing what. But two names in particular that have stood out to me more than anything are Rashee Rice and Justin Ross, who are two dudes who at different stages have caused different reactions amongst this fan base. Let's start with Rashee Rice. So far, it is hard, and we've talked about this. It is hard for a rookie wide receiver to really carve out a role in an Andy Reid offense based on the complexity of the offense and just Andy Reid's propensity to take rookies along slowly and not put too much on their plate. But Rashee Rice has made a lot of nice catches in training camp, seems to be building up a rapport with Patrick Mahomes. has really come on strong since kind of in the conditioning issues back in rookie minicamp. Just what you've been hearing about Rashee Rice? How do you think he could fit in here in year one? And how plausible do you think it is that even as a rookie, he could carve out a nice role in this offense and really find a way to help elevate that wide receiver room?
So, if we have some fantasy football players here,
You have at least me.
Wherever you think Rashee Rice is going, and wherever it kind of looks like Rashee Rice is going, I wouldn't be afraid to grab him a couple rounds earlier. I think I think there, from what I've heard to this point, I think there is a little bit more optimism and excitement about Rashee Rice than you get typically with an Andy Reid rookie. So there's been some really positive feedback. There's a lot of days that Rashee Rice is the best receiver out there in some opinions. And I think it's, some opinions that matter. So I'm very optimistic about the outlook of Rashee Rice. And you've seen some of the plays and the highlights that he's made in camp, is some of the stuff that we've been able to capture at KC Sports Network. He's making some plays. Most definitely, it's a lot of the similar ways that he had success in college. And some of the concerns about Rashee Rice coming into this draft were, things like he's not maybe going to be able to separate consistently at a high level. And you can have success without being a highly consistent separator, but that means your paths to success are a little bit more narrow. And even though he's not necessarily separating at a crazy high level, he's still being able to win at the catch point. He's still showing great body control with the ball in the air. And so some of those things, while don't necessarily translate 100% of the time, do seem to have translated to this point. So some of the knocks on Rashee Rice are, they're getting checked off as, hey, he's still able to do this. He's still able to find success doing it. That's a reason for optimism. He's a guy I'm most looking forward to getting eyes on as the process goes on.
It's really great to see. And yeah, I've seen everything with him. He's starting to check a lot of those boxes to really fit into a potential nice role with the Chiefs. The other guy that's been standing out a lot the past few days, Justin Ross, who was the, of course, darling of the internet last offseason and making his cool catches and other things. And there's been a lot of, I think, for me, or at least what I would assume to be, the hope is just around what he could be. We remember how great he was in the national championship game at Clemson, then injuries have just completely derailed what he could do. This is his first real hard through offseason with a chance to make this team and make something of himself. Same thing with Justin Ross here. How plausible do you think it is that he can carve out a role in this team and really make a way to make it through and figure out what he can do to have a role on this team if he can make that 53-man roster with this wide receiver room kind of being open for the taking?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough battle for Justin Ross, and not that I don't think he will be on this roster or anything. I think there's still a very good chance that he could be on this roster. The tricky part for Justin Ross is the spots that he's competing for are a lot more of a, typically a special teamer type profile. So, you've heard some reports of Justin Ross maybe returning some punts and being in some of the, return game a little bit, getting work in there in the return game. I don't know if that's necessarily something that is akin to his skill set, but it might be something he's, experimenting and trying to do just to continue to add value to himself. He's probably a wide receiver 6 type player, 5 type player. And with that profile, the guy that's probably not going to do much for you on special teams, that's where it becomes a big challenge. So you either got to get creative to make sure you're maintaining him on the roster, or, you've got to, take your chances and try to pass him through the waiver process. Now, the good thing I think for the Chiefs is because he's probably not going to give you much on special teams, and, there's not a ton of familiarity or tape on him on offense, I don't know how many teams are going to be comfortable rostering him either, because I don't know if he's a guy that is a wide receiver 3 at a different team. The Chiefs have a lot of depth, and you can make the argument they have a lot of depth, but it's a lot of depth of players that profile more as wide receivers 2, 3, 4. So, there's probably a few Justin Rosses out there that, on other teams that they're probably going to feel more comfortable with. They might be able to get him through on the practice squad and, through the waiver process. And maybe that's the guy, if they eventually put Kadarius Toney on IR, that they bring back to the 53-man roster after passing through waivers.
That is honestly a real interesting way to think about it. And I'm kind of with you. There's just some ways that it might be hard for him to get on the roster. We'll see what the Chiefs do as it goes forward. My final two questions for you, Kent, my two for the road. First things first, in addition to, doing some great work covering the Chiefs, you're a Big 12 guy as well. And the Big 12 had some breaking news yesterday. Colorado's back. How do you feel about the Colorado Buffaloes being back in the Big 12?
I just started covering Kansas football a little bit more the last couple of years. I might just have to find an excuse the next time KU goes to Colorado just to watch that game, because that would be a lot of fun to go check those games. I'm excited to have Colorado back. I can't wait to see what the Big 12 does to continue to insulate themselves and, protect themselves in a chaotic, college environment right now. I'm more so looking forward to what's next. Are they able to attract someone bigger? Are they able to kind of continue to eat into the Pac-12? Because that would be absolutely delicious.
It really would be. And I'll be honest, Ken, I feel like at least one more Pac-12 school might be coming the way of the Big 12 soon. And the Pac-12 has no one to blame but themselves. And it's very, very funny to me at this point. My final question for you, our list today, in honor of it being incredibly hot outside and a very fun thing to do on a warm day, is hang out at water parks. We're doing our favorite parts of water parks for our list today. If you are going to a water park, if you're just going there, you're hanging out, you're having fun, what is the number one thing you would think is the most fun thing to do at a water park?
Oh, whatever their most extreme slide is what. I took my kid to Worlds of Fun and Oceans of Fun a couple weeks ago, my oldest, and they have some really cool slides where the bottom falls out. It's like a drop right off the top. So you put you in a little platform that falls out. That was incredible. So yeah, give me that. It was just the most extreme water slide you can find.
So you are definitely a fan of the places that are there's a slide 1 billion feet up and you're just torpedoing down it into a pool.
I went to I was in Wisconsin about a decade ago, and they have just this ridiculous water slide. One of their slides is a near loop, a near upside down loop. I don't know how the physics work, but it works just enough to be able to kind of almost flip you in a water slide. Just give me whatever ridiculous extreme slide you can. I'm in.
Hey, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. I incredibly respect it. Kent, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, my friend. Stay cool and have a great rest of the weekend.
Hey, you too.
As Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. That does it for the new hour of Mic'd Up. The 1 o'clock hour is coming up next. It is time for hour number 2 of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. I want to say thank you to Ken Swanson, the KC Sports Network, for hopping on to chat last hour. We have a lot to get to on the rest of the show still, including hearing from numerous members of the Kansas City Chiefs. We will look at the Big 12's next steps in expansion. We know Colorado is here. The Buffaloes are back. Ralphie is running wild in the Big 12 yet again. It's a great day. But what are their next steps? Who could be the next teams that they bring in? That is the big question. We'll look at that coming up this hour. We're going to hear from Andy Reid and Trey Smith at the bottom of this hour. See what Big Red and the big right guard for the Chiefs had to say, speaking at training camp earlier today. Everyone loves the list. We did our favorite parts of theme parks for National Merry-Go-Round Day on Tuesday. Jake added a water park theme. They're two different things, but Jake added, which got me thinking. In combination with that, today is National Water Park Day, and it is hotter than the sun itself outside because it's like 115 real temp. It's terrible. Nothing would feel better than getting to hang out at a water park right now. So Kyle and I are going to do our favorite water park attractions, activities, things to do at a water park. That is our list today. And the 2 o'clock hour, we're going to preview the Royals Twins series, also looking at any updates on the trade market, and hear from Willie Gay and Brian Cook as well. As always, you can join in on the text line, 785-272-9429. Your texts are always welcome, even more welcome on a day where it is mainly just me with a little bit of Kyle, as there's just more time and more room to chat with all you lovely fine folk listening and watching in on the program. And speaking of watching, you can watch Mic'd Up right now on YouTube.com on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube.com. Sportszone 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. You can jump in the comment section of the live stream as well. But where we begin this hour is with expansion. Yesterday, Colorado's board voted unanimously to join the Big 12. That was a Zoom meeting they had in the 4 o'clock hour yesterday that we broke on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. I was also along for the ride for Crosstalk. It's official. Colorado's coming. The Buffaloes have sent out a tweet. The Big 12 has sent out a tweet, a very fun tweet from the Big 12. Colorado is officially back. They will join the league next year at the conclusion of the 2023-2024 athletic calendar. So basically at the end of like May or June next year. So basically like July next year. Whenever, Houston and Cincinnati, all those teams officially join the Big 12 this year, that's when Colorado will join next year. They will officially be back in the conference. That right now means the Big 12 is at 13 teams next year because OU and Texas will go to the SEC next year. The Big 12 is not going to play with 13 teams. It's not going to happen. It makes everything weird. Being an odd numbered conference makes all of your stuff difficult to do outside of like being at like 11 teams. Because if you're at 11, you can at least do like 10 conference games and you can make some of those things work or stuff like that. 13 is an awkward number to be at. So we are now, and not just we, as in me and Brendan and Dan and Jake, are not just operating under the context that we think the Big 12 will expand. Numerous sources around the league and different reporters tied into the Big 12 and even the Pac-12 have all indicated the Big 12 will continue to expand. Now, there is not a definitive decision on whether the Big 12 will add just one team and get to 14 or whether they will add 3 teams and get to 16. There are multiple parts to this that have to be sussed out for the Big 12. Part of this is the pro rata and the contract with ESPN and Fox. They have agreed in the pro rata to increase the money they're paying the conference if they add more Power 5 members so that the new Power 5 members can get a full share in the new media rights deal. However, they also, though, have the power to kind of say, hey, we would like you to not add so many teams so that we don't have to pay so much more because of our own economic situation. There have been reports that ESPN would prefer the Big 12 only add one more team to get to 14 and stay at 14 for a few years, given their recent economic situation and their layoffs and all the things they're doing to get their numbers up and better. How much of that is, I don't want to say true, but like how much of that is an impact when the Big 12 does is still left to be seen. 1 or 3 is what they're doing, and we talked about this a little bit on 580 Sports Talk yesterday. I want to talk about it more here to get into kind of my thoughts on it. I think if they take more teams from the Pac-12, they'll add 3. Which, would cripple the Pac-12 to like 6 teams. Which is getting funnier by the minute. That the Pac-12 is just disintegrating in front of our very eyes. But it's because they were stupid. And it's very funny. It's hilarious to me. That being said, I think if they go Pac-12, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, I feel like would be the 3 most likely to join. Oregon would still be a team you would love to have join if possible. Yeah, I think Utah makes a lot of sense based on their geographic region. They had some good games with Colorado, kind of started developing a little bit of a rivalry with Colorado in the Pac-12, and they have a natural built-in rival in BYU with the Holy War. If they came to the Big 12, that just becomes a conference game. That becomes, their consistent rivalry game, like we have KU, K-State, K-State, Iowa State, when they were conference members, OU, Oklahoma State, things like that. That was built in, that was ingrained. BYU, Utah could be that. But there was another one that I had kind of put on the back burner that talking to Brendan and Dan yesterday very much brought it more to the forefront of me. I am now moved my position to where the Big 12 adds only one team. If they just go to 14, I think UConn's the move. There's been a lot of rumor about the Big 12 and UConn and the Big 12's interest in adding the Huskies. I think Brett Yormark being able to get Colorado back in the fold will give him the cachet he needs to sell the Big 12 athletic directors on adding UConn. Because part of your problem is if you add UConn, the football is to a level worrisome. Their football is not great, but they did just win 6 games and go to a bowl game as an independent. They will definitely see regression the first year or two that they're in the Big 12. That would happen 100%. But getting potential access to more fertile recruiting grounds, getting different types of players that can maybe get committed, getting, an influx of money from being in the Big 12 versus being independent, that could help them elevate that football program faster. But the biggest thing is the Big 12 seems to be trying to create an identity that I'm very fine with, in that it is going to be the premier conference for college basketball. That if you are looking for top level, night in, night out, great college hoops, you will want to watch a Big 12 game. That the toughest conference to win is the Big 12. And adding the reigning national champions would be beneficial. At that point, if you added UConn, you would have, because now I'm looking back at this just so I can have all the numbers I want. Yeah. Let's say UConn gets added sooner rather than later. Well, until a new national champion is crowned, technically, the last 3 national champions would all be Big 12 teams. Now, again, the UConn part of that is, well, they weren't in the Big 12 when it happened, and then they're coming later. But that's how good of a program that is. Because your last 3 national champions are UConn, Kansas. People forget that the Kansas Jayhawks were your national champions 2 years ago. And Baylor. Like, the Big 12 won back-to-back national titles. If you then add the current reigning national champion, at the worst, let's say UConn joins in 2024, and let's say no Big 12 team wins the college basketball national title coming up this year when it comes into early part of 24. Your conference would be able to say 3 of the last 4 national champions reside in our conference. That means something, and we've gone at length about this. Football is what makes the money go. It is what it is at this point. Football is what makes the money go. But there is value in having very, very good college basketball. And that's where, as I've thought about this and, slept on it a little bit and really started trying to think about it, I'm very, very much realizing that we're moving to the camp of UConn might be the best choice if a singular team is added. If you're adding multiple teams, I still believe getting a couple more from the Pac-12 makes more sense in the build that you're trying to do and be able to stretch yourself more to the West Coast and kind of give you more of a West Coast presence. That's where, Utah or the Arizonas, or especially if you could add Oregon's my almost like number 1 pipe dream, because that football brand would do so much for this conference. And then you also get a foothold in the Pacific Northwest, which is not like a massive market, but is still a nice area to be getting into. But if you have to add just one team, if you have to sit at 14 for several years, and you're just going to be a 14-team conference, UConn makes a lot of sense. And until we get to a point where you potentially move to where basketball gets to be its own thing, and more importantly, football becomes its own entire separate entity, because honestly, that's what it needs to be. It is run so differently. It is viewed so differently. And the conferences can be made so different. Until we get to that day, I think having fun football, which just means maybe you don't have any top tier, the Big 12 football will never be we're winning a bunch of national titles, we're the best teams every year. It'll probably rarely be that. But what it can be is we're going to be the most competitive, the most balanced, the most fun conference every year. Because like the SEC has the best football at the top. Alabama, Georgia, they kill everyone. But does anyone here think the SEC is balanced? That it's deep? You can pass like the top 4 teams, and then there's just like a gigantic drop off a shelf. That's even more so in the Big Ten. The Big Ten, for now, is Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and then everyone else. Maybe Wisconsin, makes a resurgence under Luke Fickell. Maybe Matt Rule turns Nebraska into something relevant. I really doubt that. Maybe Michigan State figures something out and shows that their 1 year of being good wasn't a pipe dream. Maybe some of that happens. I don't know. But as of right now, the 2 best conferences with some of the best overall teams are not the deepest conferences. Whereas the Big 12, they might not be able to stand up to those top tier teams, but their depth is stronger than the others. It's all about having something to hang your hat on. That's kind of the biggest thing with all of this is you want something to hang your hat on as a conference. That is what's needed. That is what's important in the day and age of streaming and social media and the way our sphere of influence has changed. When it comes to athletics, you need, and this kind of goes into everything else as well, you need something to identify yourself with, that people think of you and they think of a thing. The Big 12, basketball-wise, is kind of being the way you can view their entire conference. Is you think of the Big 12 and the athletic sphere, you think, oh, that's where I go for good basketball. That's the best basketball in the country. It's something. It's beneficial. It gets you recognized. And if you're thinking in the football sphere, like, all right, what am I thinking for football? I think of the SEC. They get the best teams. Big 10 has some fun, hard-nosed teams. I think you think of Big 12, they're just always competitive. That it's just wild. It's a wide-open race every year. The SEC is just usually the annual Georgia-Alabama Invitational. Like, 9 out of 10 times, that's all the SEC is. It's the Georgia-Alabama Invitational. And then in the Big Ten, it's, all right, who's going to win the Big Ten East because they're going to win the Big Ten. Like, that's what you think every year. Whereas the Big 12 can go, hey, who knows who's winning this year? Draw a name out of a hat. That'll be as good as you can get at predicting who's going to win our conference. That's fun. That might not always lead to the best team, but it leads to the most entertainment. So that's where I kind of feel the Big 12 is going, is Brett Yormark is trying to help identify and build a brand, a culture for the Big 12, an identifier. As far as expansion goes, if they're adding one team, it feels like UConn will be the move and should be the move almost, because you can find a way to use that to build your basketball brand. Football will come along eventually. They can get there. Teams can build up as they get the more resources from being in a bigger conference, and for UConn just being in a conference. It would feel weird for UConn to no longer play in the Big East, but I mean, they played in the American and that felt weird. At least the Big 12 is a more historic conference than the American Athletic Conference. But if they go west, Utah fits perfectly. Arizona State geographically. We talked for a while about would the Big 12 just add the Four Corners schools. Arizona State, and Utah would accomplish that. They would fit if you're going to go bigger. Oregon would be nice, but I still just don't know how realistic that's going to be. The biggest thing, though, is the simple fact of expansion is not done. The Big 12 is going to find 1 to 3 more teams to add to get to 14 or 16. They will be that way in 2024. We will have a very new Big 12 with our 4 new members that are getting experience this year, and then the old member coming back in Colorado. and then whoever else they decide to get. I don't know when that timeline would come. I don't know when a decision would be made. Feels like the Big 12 at least was trying to at least get Colorado on board before the start of August. Outside of that, I don't know when they might consider adding other teams to get them ready to go. With conference buyouts and all that, it gets a little more complicated, but who knows? But for a singular team, I think UConn might be it. But if they want to add more, I'm still team Utah, Arizona, Arizona State. If you want to make a Western footprint, I think those teams fit with what you're trying to do culturally, because I think Arizona State and Utah can give you some good football competitiveness, and a little bit of help on the basketball court. And then Arizona would be your marquee basketball program to add that would really help with this idea of the best basketball conference in college athletics. We'll have to see what the Big 12 does going on down the line. We'll take a time out. When we come back, everyone loves the list. Best parts about the water park. Time for Everyone Loves the List here on Mic'd Up. And with that, I bring in my good man, Kyle Manthe, to help out with it. Kyle, it's National Water Park Day. We did theme parks earlier this week. Now we're doing water parks. What is your number 4 favorite thing at the water park?
Number 4, I've got the tidal wave pool kind of thing that kind of like tries to replicate the ocean. It's pretty chill, and I mean it's fun, but it's not the ocean, so that's why it's down at number 4.
I'm actually right there. The number 4 for me is the wave pool. The wave pool is fun. It's chill. It's relaxed. They kick on the waves, and you just kind of chill there and kind of go up and down with it. Jake likes the lazy river. If I'm vibing at a water park trying not to do nothing, give me a wave pool.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, I've got, similar to Kent Swanson, kind of like the open slide. I don't want it to be enclosed. I think like open ones are better, and one where you're like in a raft, you're not like on the the like slide material
Okay.
itself, something where you're like in a raft and it's open, not enclosed.
Okay. I respect it there a little bit. Number 3 for me. It's only 3 because I can get these also at regular amusement parks. Give me some kind of like a log flume type ride. Water parks can kind of get a little more crazier with theirs and it's a little more expansive. They're only 3 though because I can get them at other places. So since they're not exclusive, it's not as high.
Number 2, I've got the lazy river. That's kind of fun. The rides you take so long to get on them. When you get in the lazy river, you can kind of chill in that for a long time. So you get to actually have some like extended time in the water, and you just get to be lazy.
And that's my number 2 as well. Brendan kind of makes comments about Jake about that not being a ride. Listen, for water parks, it's definitely a ride. There is nothing better. Like the wave pool's really fun. Lazy rivers, man, you can just sit there and vibe.
Number 1, kind of cheating like Jake. I know like at Worlds of Fun, they have like the Fury of the Nile, I think it's called. Just like some kind of ride like that, like a log cabin type ride where you go up and down a little bit, something like that. It's always fun.
Number 1 for me, very much like our good friend Ken Swanson. Give me just a big old water slide. The bigger, the better. I want to pick up Mach 1 speeds as I'm going down and around. I'm probably not to a level of Kent with some of the craziness of it, but I'm with him though. Big slides might be the best part of water parks at all. If you have a thought on your favorite parts of the water parks, let us know on our text line 785-272-9429 or in the comment section of our YouTube live stream. We're going to take a time out. When we come back, we'll hear from Andy Reid and Trey Smith from Chiefs Training Camp. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you. As we move to close out the 1 o'clock hour. It hasn't officially happened yet, but another trade in MLB is potentially close to happening. No, it does not involve the Kansas City Royals. Bummer. But it does involve an AL Central team. The Los Angeles Dodgers are close to an agreement to acquire Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly from the Chicago White Sox. Sources tell Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. Also, a few other guys on top of it as well. We're going to, in the 2 o'clock hour, get to the Royals. We'll preview their series with the Twins, and we'll discuss some of their trade situations, including one particular player who at least has a specific team attached to him. Whether the Royals will go through with the trade or whether that team will go through with the trade is yet to be seen. But the Royals might be active, but we're going to look at a few things regarding them. But other teams in the AL Central, very active at the deadline. Also, another trade last night. The New York Mets officially sellers as they traded away closer David Robertson. Kind of showing that they're officially selling, which makes me feel good. I did not project the Mets to miss the playoffs. I did say old dudes to lead the rotation was going to blow up in their face. And it entirely, it's very funny to me. incredibly funny, including Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer might get traded, which if so, that is even more amazing. But that is your very brief MLB trade deadline update. Now, though, as training camp is underway for the Kansas City Chiefs, as always, after their practice, several members of the Chiefs met with the media. We're going to hear next hour from the defensive contingent in Brian Cook and Willie Gay. But right now, we're going to lead off this hour hearing from essentially two members of the offensive contingent, head coach Andy Reid and offensive lineman Trey Smith, as they both spoke with the media today. First things first, though, let's hear what head coach Andy Reid had to say earlier today at Chiefs training camp.
The ones today, Tranquil strained his neck. Swanson hurt his shoulder. They're going to check it out here. And then Dana strained his calf. So, but all in all, it was good work today. Guys challenged themselves. A little shorter practice, hour and 40-minute practice. And the guys worked. It was good to get them back in pads and working to challenge each other. So for that, time's yours.
Andy, first day of pads, can you feel that energy go up?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, yeah, naturally it does that. So, but I like the way they did it, how they got after each other. Yeah.
You like it when you got to ramp it up. It's a physical game, but saw a couple of the, after the play, little conversations. Travis was involved in one. How do you manage being amped up, but not going?
Yeah, fighting was a waste of time. You get thrown out of games doing it, get hurt out here doing it. So, but they're going to jaw. It's hot, humid. They're going to jaw a little bit, just as long as there's no punches thrown. We're all right. They're going to talk a little bit, but that happens.
Thoughts on your two new tackles, how they looked at pads?
Yeah, they did pretty good. It's a challenge mentally and physically for them, being new and then going through the practice like this. So not always used to that, but I thought they hung in there pretty good, yeah.
Coach Isaiah got a little work in the past. How long before he's actually a full go?
We'll just see. We're kind of taking that day by day. We'll just see how it goes. No setbacks. That's what we're looking for. But he feels pretty good. We'll just see how it rolls. Take it slow.
Any guys stand out to you on the first day?
No. I mean, they all did, I thought they all did a pretty good job. I can't pick one out. They might not show up tomorrow. If I pick just one, I might only be coaching one guy.
Your early looks at Justin Ross, how have you seen him adjust to this camp, and how is he actually going to get some practice?
Yeah, no, he's getting better every day. I mean, this will be good for him with the pads on, and he's such a big kid, tall kid. Ability to go up and get the ball, that type of stuff will benefit him.
Any early impressions on Matt Bushman and Generic Prince? What's really impressive?
Yeah, both doing good. Bush is playing tight end and working hard. He's competing. Good route runner, real good route runner. Knows what he's doing there. He's going to continue to work on the run game part of it, but that's what he's doing. So, and then Prince, it's just a matter of staying on top of everything. So it's new to him. Protections are always for the rookie running backs is a thing you have to learn. So, but he's such a hard worker. Great hands. Looked like he had good vision in the 9-on-7 in the run game. Yeah.
John Ross tell you before he left?
Yeah, he didn't say much. He just was tired of it, and I'm sure there was some frustration there, but he'll be fine. He's a sharp kid. He's one of the guys. He'll make it somewhere.
Earlier in the week, Trey was ready for pads because he likes to hit people. What have you seen from him?
Which one?
Trey.
Yeah. Which Trey were there? Trey Smith. Yeah. No, he's always ready to hit somebody. He's a tough kid, and I thought he did a good job. He had a couple where his hands got out, but he's got to just keep those in tight. And it's good to have the officials out here helping us with all that. So they hear from the officials. That's even different than hearing it from a coach. So, but he does a good job, hard worker.
Coach, you've had Willie here for a while. Just how have you seen him progress over the years?
Yeah, I like the way he stepped up the last couple of years here. He's got the defense down, and phenomenal athlete. He's a great athlete. Loves to play, brings great energy.
Coach, Rashee Rice. You got a chance to see him in pads. And I know first year, sometimes it can be tough. You got a lot you give him. How's he getting the offense, and how did he look trying to apply it in pads?
Yeah, sure. Sharp kid, tremendous talent. This is all new to him. When you're a rookie receiver, you come in here, you're running miles. And so you got to get used to that and the pace. There's no play off. There's no backside. I mean, you got to go 100 miles an hour. So he's learning that. But he's willing, and he works hard, and quarterbacks like him. So he's doing a good job.
Flip side, it's just a follow-up, sorry. Sky Moore having that year, how much further down the road, how much quicker is he now?
He's doing a nice job. Sky's tough. He's good after the catch and got good hands, good route runner. Has worked a lot with Pat in the offseason. So, he's solid. Yep.
Coach, it's a bit of an obligatory question, but have you heard from Chris in the last few days since we last talked to you?
I haven't. No.
Expectation on when he might come in?
Don't know. We're moving fast and furious, even though he's not here.
Coach, you talked about Brian Cook stepping up and being the voice just during this offseason. How do you look in the first day of pads?
Yeah, he's doing a nice job. Both he and Reed, both their games have picked up. And we saw that later part of the season with both of them. And, we saw it during the OTAs, and I'm sure that'll continue here. So they're he's doing a nice job, yeah.
Mine's kind of off the beaten path, but you're kind of one of the father figures of football, right? Like, not saying you're old, Coach.
Basically.
You have that, but you've also coached in college. The situation at Northwestern, the hazing and everything. I know, like, rookies will be carrying guys' pads and everything.
Yeah.
What's kind of your, like, when does it go too far? How do you keep it from?
Yeah, well, we talk about it. I mean, I don't hide it from him. I mean, we let the guys that'll get in front of the line and carry helmets, but past that, there's no physical stuff, man. That is those days are gone. So you can't mess around with that.
Are you surprised to hear that there are coaches that think that would actually somehow help?
Yeah, well, I'm a big Fitz fan. I mean, I think I've had a lot of players come from there that have been tremendous. Mike Kafka being one of them, the parts of his program that I knew, I mean, it was tremendous. So. I had a lot of respect for him. So, whatever, I don't know the situation. I don't know what's real, not real.
That was head coach Andy Reid speaking earlier today at training camp. I do like it. It is interesting when the Chiefs and other training camp places can get the officials out there for a little bit to be a part of training camp and the drills. Because I think Andy Reid's right. Like, in regard to Trey Smith, and he was the guy that consensus from Creed Humphrey you heard speak on 580 Sports Talk the other day, saying, the one guy most excited to get pads on is Trey Smith. The dude just loves hitting people. He loves lining up and trying to maul people. It's a great mentality to have for a good run blocking interior offensive lineman. But I think there is just this weird benefit to when you can have officials at your training camp for these drills, because it's one thing if like Spags is watching a drill and he or Andy Reid watching it, or Matt Aguirre, anybody there, and they whistle and go, Trey, you're holding. That was a hold. Like, you might internally, whether they would ever process this out loud, they might internally go, they're probably watching me tight, just to be extra safe. That might be what they're thinking, it probably wasn't actually a hold. It probably wouldn't get called in a game, but they want me to be extra safe. And it may make you a little more, not necessarily complacent, but not take it as seriously. We would just have the officials there. And like, these are, people who are a part of the officiating crews and different levels of actual officials. So, they're there to just call penalties. Like, they're there to view this like an actual game. Well, when they're calling stuff, you go, wow, this is just, maybe you can have the same thought that maybe Coach Reid or somebody said, hey, watch stuff a little closer. But overall, it's just no. Like, their job in this situation and all situations is to call the game to how it should be called. So it means, honestly, in my opinion, I think it means a little bit more when you do get those officials calling things out and pointing out penalties and saying things like that. So that's an interesting little thing that I find is a fascinating nugget. Not just the Chiefs training camp, but any training camp where they can get the officials out there. Is it just anytime you can get different perspectives, whether that's just a different voice on a drill, different people with a different set of eyes, different perspectives in practice situations is always helpful and is always a good thing. And so that's why I think it's very beneficial the Chiefs were able to have officials out at the first padded practice today when there's a bit more physicality, when there's a bit more contact to go, hey, let's keep remembering we're doing stuff in the fundamentals. We're still, make sure we're doing things in the way that you're being coached up to do it and making sure you do it properly and things like that. So it's a very interesting thing to get added and something that I think is a nice little touch that will definitely benefit the Chiefs and benefits any teams. It's not just just the Chiefs do it, but it benefits any team. They can get officials out to their training camp practices as well. Speaking of Trey Smith, he spoke with the media as well earlier today. Here's what the Chiefs right guard had to say speaking with the media earlier today after training camp practice.
This was year 3 now for you? What's it like just this time in camp?
Yeah, it's classic St. Joe's, man. Not much to it. Just getting back into that daily routine and grind and training camp.
What's it feeling like with those 2 new tackles and that interior? I mean, it still looks, still good as usual. So, what's it like just with the whole new all-around?
Yeah, just a testament to Coach Andy Heck, Corey Matei, and we have Coach Jason Smith coming in right now too. Just the job that they do in terms of preparing us for what we face daily. Obviously, the interior is still the same, so getting the chance to work with my guys Joe and Creed is always fun. But also having our new tackles in Donovan and Jawan Taylor, they're doing an excellent job just making sure they're getting up to speed in terms of what we do as an offense and what we do as a team and our culture.
Yeah, Creed said the interior is just, y'all work so well together that sometimes you don't even, communicate during games. Yeah. What is that like and how does that even work?
It feels great, first off, but, when you have that sense of trust and you respect and the guy beside you has your back in every situation, like he said, a lot of times it's almost like secondhand reflexes at this point.
You look forward to that first day in pads because you get to hit people. Yeah, well, being out there first day.
Yeah, first day, man. Your first time you put on the pads, obviously you're still a little bit rusty. Someone made the comment earlier, the last time we really put in pads was like during the Super Bowl. I was like, dang, that's been a while. So, you have some things that you got to clean up. Some things you can be a little bit tighter technique-wise, but it's always good to put the pads back on. It's always good knowing the season's around the corner.
Still feels hungry having just won. I think a lot of guys fight for years and don't get it. You have that Super Bowl now. Is it hard to have that energy, to have that hunger, or does it do it the other way? Is it want it more?
Yeah, we're always hungry, man. I mean, I'm hungry right now. I could go for a corn dog. But, at the end of the day, we're always hungry. We understand that even though we might have won it last year, no one cares. That's the reality of football. That's the reality of the game we play. No one really cares what you did the previous year. It matters what you put on the field this current year and what you show up and do.
I think it was a pack here in OTAs that kept you at the end there. Feeling 100% now? Is that all behind you?
Oh, yeah, feeling good. We have a great medical staff headed by Rick Burkholder. They did a marvelous job, make sure I'm ready to go this summer. And really just making sure I'm just ready to go in general. So they've done a great job. I'm ready to keep playing.
Do you think it's kind of inside the helmet when you guys are doing the offensive, defensive line one-on-ones? What kind of mentality do you have to have for that kind of drill?
Yeah, one-on-ones is it's a love-hate relationship. You love it when you do good. You hate it when you just get beat off the line. For me, I just try to calm down the situation and just really lock into the coaching points, the techniques, knowing what I need to correct, and just being able to capture that moment, that finite moment, and be effective at what you're doing. Because, at the end of the day, a lot of times, a guy goes that far inside, he's going to run into your buddy or he might overrush, but it's you mano a mano, all the technical details, everything, every little piece matters. So being able to lock in those little seconds and get your job done, it's a great feeling when you can do it right. It sucks when you lose.
How far have you and Jawan come so far, as you guys have been working together communication-wise?
Yeah, JT's awesome, man. Really cool dude, easy to go along with. Been really effective playing with him. Already building some chemistry with him, which is some of the little things that we do. But he's been great. I'm really excited to play next to him. Really looking forward to it this season.
Talk about the one-on-ones and all the details. Is that the best measurement in a training camp or the best drill that kind of figures out where you are? Or is there another area of camp and a practice or a drill or technique that really is more important to you?
Yeah, I think one-on-one, it's a great measuring stick in terms of what you're doing, how effective your technique is. To me, I think there are other drills. The defense obviously has an advantage. I mean, they don't know the snap count, but they know all they got to do is rush the passer. You know, when you have more of a team drill, I feel like you have long drive drill where they don't know what's coming. They have to play it honest. You know, I feel that's a better time. And you're sustaining your block after like multiple, 10-plus plays. So to me, I feel that's a better gauge in terms of how you're doing. How consistent can you be when you're tired? How locked in can you be when you're tired?
Trey, just for you, I mean, you are regarded as one of the top guards in the game. And it's kind of hard to measure when you're an old lineman, not many stats out there. Just how do you measure how you play, and just what do you expect just further in your career?
Yeah, measuring my gameplay and who I am as a player ultimately depends on how well I do day in and day out. You know, the feedback I get from my coaches, obviously a good job, or hey, you got to do this better. But ultimately, I think the best way for me to measure it this year is just consistency. How consistent can I do? How effective can I be at getting my job done on a consistent basis? So that's what I'm looking for at myself, way more consistency this year.
Consistency is key above all else, and it's always great to see not just Trey, but guys in general recognize that, because I think that can be something all players want, but I don't think enough players recognize what needs to be done to put in the work to achieve it. Because it's one thing to have, like, I'll give you an example. Willie Gay is a guy I talk about. We're going to hear from Willie Gay here coming up next hour. Chiefs fans think he deserves to see the field more and are always questioning when he's off the field and why Simmons doesn't play as much. And I've always circled back to Willie Gay has some great high moments. He really does. But he's not consistent as a football player, and that's what he needs to maybe earn more consistent playing time and to really entrench himself as a consistent player for Steve Spagnuolo, is being consistent. That applies to all players. So even for Trey Smith, he has some great highlights as a player. He runs guys over, good in protection, but there are times he's not consistent as a player. And that, to me, is that real nice step from a fairly good player and usual starter, but can, be replaceable, to, at minimum, this is a solid, consistent, average player in the NFL. Is just, are you consistent with your play? Can I look at you and know, I know almost to a T when I'm going to get 9 out of 10 snaps? That is such an important factor. And to hear that Trey Smith is working on that, you'll love to hear it. And it's great to hear what he's been up to this training camp period. That'll do it for this hour. Mike Dip coming on the 2 o'clock hour. We're from Willie Gay and Brian Cook. We'll have on second thought, and we'll look at the Royals matchup with the Twins and their trade deadline moments. All that's coming up next on Mike Up. Final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Just an hour away from entering the weekend, or at least for me, and I assume part of you as well, some of you out there. Maybe you're already here for the weekend. I don't know. I am with you until 3 o'clock. Then Dan Lucero will have you for 580 Sports Talk. No Brendan Dorzinski for 580 Sports Talk. It is just a two-man crew for the Sports on 580 team with a lot of Kyle helping us out, and we greatly appreciate it. As Brendan is also now on vacation. So Dan and I are filling your airwaves for the 6 hours of Sports Talk today. So for some of you, that makes you very happy. For some of you, it makes you a little sad. No matter what, though, we appreciate you because it's the friends along the way that is part of the biggest part of the journey. And that's as reflective as I will ever get. Coming up in this final hour of Mike Up, we're going to hear from Brian Cook and Willie Gay. They also spoke at Chiefs training camp today. Hear from the defensive contingent representatives of the Kansas City Chiefs this afternoon. We'll have this week's edition of On Second Thought, as always, our Friday staple. And then we'll preview the series with the Royals and the Twins, what to look out for. Spoiler, really not a lot. This series might get real boring real fast. And we'll also have some updates from the MLB trade deadline. Might have a new trade report here sooner rather than later, as a trade is quickly coming in and parting to be finalized. We'll also look at some Royals trade candidates, including one player who has a specific team attached to him. And I'll kind of give you my thoughts on if I think that means that there's any more reality and ability that he might actually get moved for the Royals ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, you can join in on the conversation on the text line, 785-272-9429. You can also hop into the comment section of our YouTube live stream. Just go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it as we get ever so closer to 300 subscribers. And you can jump in on the comment section and be a part of the show as well. But where we begin this hour is Willie Gay and Brian Cook spoke at training camp today, two young defenders for the Chiefs in two very different roles. For Willie Gay, who we will hear from first, he might lose some snaps in the linebacker room with the addition of Drew Tranquill, but Drew Tranquill also left with an injury today. That might affect some things as well. But for Willie Gay, somebody, like I said, seeking consistency on the football field and kind of moving and maneuvering through if it continues to go through his NFL career. This could be the last season for Willie Gay. I believe this is his last year under contract for the Chiefs through his rookie contract. We'll see if the Chiefs keep him around after this season. So a contract year, the contract year that is always undefeated. See what Willie Gay does here coming up in his NFL season coming up. But here's what Willie Gay had to say speaking at training camp earlier today.
Really, just what's this offseason been like for you stepping up into this next year of the defense?
It's been a good one, man. Like I just said earlier, I'm blessed to even be here. So much could have happened, but I'm in year 4 now, and I'm thankful and ready to have some fun. So.
You feel like an now?
Oh yeah, I'm young, but it's year 4, man. It's like it flew by, and so with that in my mind, I know I got to lead in a different way this year, So.
You mentioned you're in year 4. It's the natural contract year for playing in year spot. Does that add any pressure to you or any expectations and goals for you this season?
I just want to ball out, man. Just like last year, I want to ball out. I missed 4 games, unfortunately, but this year, man, trying to be injury-free, stay out there with my team and give it all I got, and let everything else handle itself in the back end. I just want to win another Super Bowl, add that to my resume and let everything else handle itself.
How did today feel, first day in pads?
It was one of those days, and we got better today. It was Coach Reed's training camp practice today. I'll tell you that. Tomorrow won't be no easier, but like I told the guys, as long as we continue to get better, it's gonna make it the games and preseason even easier, and we'll start winning. So.
In the past, you said you wanted to lead linebackers in interceptions. Just how much is making turnovers a point of emphasis for you?
I want to be a playmaker, man, and that's still my goal, So you can't never give up on them, and I'm sticking to them. So yes, sir, I'm definitely gonna, reach for the stars, baby. So.
You said you want to win another Super Bowl. Does it feel different having done that? That's the ultimate goal. There are lots of players that never get to do it.
Because
it's hard to turn it back on.
It's exciting to say I want to win a Super Bowl. When you already got one, then you really want to win another one. So it's like an extra motivation. And so I'm definitely fighting for that, though, man. That's a great feeling. So.
What's it been like playing with Drew? We got another veteran in the room.
Like you say, he has that, year 5 guy. So like you say, another veteran in the room, man. He knows so much, so smart. Played a big role in L.A. with the Chargers, and to bring it here, man, I'm learning from him. We learning from each other. Like, that's what you do, and it's been great having him.
Couple more.
Willie, one of the leaders of the defense isn't here. Of course, Chris Jones. What is the defense missing without him being out there?
We've been rolling, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. Of course, we all know Chris Jones. I ain't gonna get into it, but we've been rolling, and with him, of course, it will be a great defense. But, while we're here and while things are the way they are, we're gonna ball out. So.
To the defense as a whole, if Chris is able to get the deal going and he comes back at some point, what would that do for the defense?
I mean, it's add a big piece, big piece that we hope to have. We can't be out here thinking, dang, I wish Chris was here, but we just have to handle things the way they are and roll with it.
Willie, what's your impression of Tanner Trent's running back, rookie running back?
Oh, man, that boy, he going to be good. He's going to be good. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to stick to that one. So.
Last two, you guys.
Willie, talk about the growth of Nick Bolton.
The growth. That boy been growing since rookie year, man. And to be where he is now, it's like he a year 10 vet, and year 3. So to see that, it's amazing. It's like I'm witnessing greatness, right beside me, and me and him both, man, we shoot for the stars this year. So it's definitely gonna be a great season for the linebackers.
Willie, did you watch Quarterback, the Netflix show?
Yeah, I did.
What were your thoughts?
It's a cool show. They should have put me on that, but it's all good. Yeah.
Willie Gay on Quarterback, honestly, could have been incredibly hilarious. I touched Jake about this, and I'm feeling kind of right. The longer Chris Jones is away, the more people have to be asked about it, and eventually it becomes a little bit. And I've never said like it's a massive distraction, because it's not a massive distraction, but it is to a distraction for the Chiefs. And not in such a way that it's, detracting from anything they're trying to do or trying to get some work done or, trying to figure out what they're actually going to figure out what they're doing on the field or anything like that or affect how they're playing. It's not really going to do that. But the fact that, we just heard, Willie Gay get a couple of questions about it. Most defensive players at some point get a question about the fact that Chris Jones isn't here. What's that like? How's it affecting you? How's the defense rolling? And credit to all the guys. They make a valiant point. They're just like, hey, we're just next man up. We keep rolling forward. We do what we do. We figure it out. But, we are, kind of missing him a little bit. At some point, Chris Jones will be there. At some points, it'll fix some things up. But as of now, like I said, it's something that always gets pointed out. Always good to hear from Willie in year 4 in the NFL, knowing what he needs to do to try and get better, get more consistent, to use that word that we got from Trey Smith earlier today, and try and really solidify himself in the NFL. I don't know what he's going to do this year for the Chiefs. Drew Tranquill, I really think if he takes anyone's snaps, it is Willie Gay's snaps because of what he can do in coverage. The problem is Willie Gay sometimes is also really good in coverage, so I just don't know what the Chiefs are going to do. That linebacker rotation, I've said this so many times so far this offseason, it just fascinates me what the Chiefs might do at that linebacker spot, what they might do with that linebacker rotation, and how they might try and figure out the plan and figure out what they're going to do at that linebacker spot and trying to identify how they want to move through it and how they want to set it up. So I'm just still so fascinated by that and seeing what the Chiefs are going to do going forward. with that position. Different part of the defense, Brian Cook, a new starter for the Chiefs. He will be a starting safety this year alongside Justin Reed. He met with the media at training camp earlier today. Here's what Brian Cook in his second year in the NFL had to say when speaking of training camp.
I've already heard a lot about you, learning and growing in this defense, being more vocal. Just what's it like feeling and taking that step up?
Y'all hear me? Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, napkin? Yeah, hold on, give me a napkin. Oh, yeah, no, you good. What's the question again? My bad,
No, just the coaches have talked about you just stepping up in this defense and you and Jay Reed taking that big step further. Just what's it been like? How's it feel out here on the first day?
It's been good. First day of pass was nice. You had the pass clocking a little bit. You could tell some guys was definitely excited. So just, being smart, though, as you know, because the years and count. The whole object is get to the game. So be smart with that aspect. But just being in control, having control of aggression. As far as the leadership wise, just make sure everybody in front of me is doing a good job. Make sure everybody know what they need to do, the checks going on. Because the faster they play, the faster I can play. So as long as everybody in the right position in front of me, we good.
Were you one of those guys that was excited about today?
I mean, yeah, I'm a different mindset right now. I'm just trying to get my guys to understand what we plan on every down as much as possible. Like, that's where my head is at. I think the pass when the crowd comes up in the first game, obviously it comes to the present, then it'll be a whole different situation. Right now, I'm just focused on getting the guys in the right position, playing fast, understand what coach wants me to do, and working on the details before I get to the season.
My guys, it's your second year. Is that something you've taken on for this defense to be all your guys?
I mean, yeah, my guys regardless. I mean, even when last year, they were still my guys. Because at the end of the day, like, the position is safety. My object is to get everybody lined up and ready to play. Because honestly speaking, I'm the last line of defense. So if I'm confused back there, I don't know what's going on. That's a very big problem, especially with the guys in front of me. So my object is to be as confident, be as ready as I can be. So the 10 or the 9 that's in front of me, because I know I got Drew next to me, to be playing as fast and high level as he possibly can.
Juan moved on this offseason, got his deal. What did you take away?
I'm sorry?
Juan Thornhill moved on this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
What did you take away from your time with him?
It's a long list, man. I think perseverance was one thing that I kind of learned from him. I know you guys know his history. He had the injury years back. So hearing how he dealt with that and seeing how he became a pro. He only came in here he's already seasoned. I didn't see him his rookie, year or two, anything like that. But hearing his story, how he talked about himself, how he overcome some adversities coming in, and then how he put on display of great football his last year. Like, it was beautiful to watch. I just got here. I just was able to just learn from him, and he should way up for him. And actually see him too for his wedding. So that's a congratulations to him. But yeah, just learning from him day by day. He's an older guy, so I'm just trying to, no matter what, I still be the student. You know what I mean?
Talk about being a student. What have you learned from Jay Reed?
He had years on me. Yeah, he had years on me. Where to even start? He's trying to find the right words. It's so much to learn from him because he's outside of football. I would say that's to start off. Just life, coming in as a rookie, you don't really know anything. So learning from him, and he actually got the stage, which is beautiful. But just off the field, learning about how to manage through life, how to manage through, becoming of this situation. This wasn't always a thing for me. So just being comfortable in front of the cameras, things like that, and then on the field, just being ready, being a pro. I think this just goes down to everything. Because as you can see, he's playing at a high level, which I definitely enjoy. But just learn from him because he's a vet. So wherever he knows, I like to try to pick his brain about certain things. But it's about everything. I can't just pinpoint one thing. It's more about just from the way the day I wake up from off the field and the day I come back in here on the field. It's constantly learning from him, trying to figure out and pick his brain about things.
You spent some time with RC Brian Clark.
Oh yeah,
at the DB Precision Camp with Jay Reed as well. Talk about that.
It was a dope experience for me. I was a little bit. He don't know this, but I told him I was to RC. I've been following his videos for like 3 years because I didn't have like trainers and stuff growing up, so I was just trying to learn from what I could. But he was one of those guys that if he pick up and listen to the defense he played on as far as the Steelers, like he had great knowledge. So just being able to get out there with him was a blessing for me. So I just try to take whatever he was, whatever the schedule was, just go in there day by day and work hard. Everything wasn't my best, but just work hard and learn from him.
We have Nate and then Blair.
Say 8. 8.
I'm good,
It just looked like, today had a little conversation with Kelsey on the play. What was that about?
It's not just competitive. He's a high level competitor. So it's just talking to him. But obviously you see they was riled up a bit. We get the pads on, people chatting a little bit. I was just trying to, I want to get through practice, get the reps, get the reps as much as possible, and just compete though. And I think when it comes to the point where like we're wasting time chatting too much and not getting the reps, that's the problem. Okay, guys, come on, but he's one of those, he's vet. He's going to be a potential Hall of Famer. So it was kind of nice for me to really get in the scuffle a little bit. They're like, all right, cool. I see you, Kelsey. Getting a little fire on you. So that stuff also does like encourage us to be more passionate about it because it is a blessing to be out there. So it's just, it depends how you look at it. But for me, I'm just trying to, get the practice, do my job, get the reps as much as possible, and just continue to learn.
Hey, Brian, as a starter now compared to this time last year as a rookie, how do you feel different? And how is this camp different for you?
How's it count differently? I would say it's a little bit slowed down a little bit, but me having a bigger role, I'm trying to, like I said, I'm just focused on learning as much as I can of the guys that's around me. So when the time comes, when the bullets start flying, I can help wherever they need help with, from the rookie to the vet. Like, people have brain force out there, so it can get a lot of messy. So just trying to make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's and make sure everybody's in the right position.
You guys have so many rookie DBs from a year ago that are still on the team. Just how do you feel like you guys have kind of grown as a group together going into your second year?
We growing pretty well. I would say that, but it's thanks to the culture we came in. It was no choice. Like I said before, I know last year I told you guys that for us trying to learn a playbook, we would go in to like the little hotel we staying in the summer and go to the playbook. So that was the first initial. Anxious then to continue to grow. So like as time, you're gonna keep building, just like fine wine.
Just like fine wine, they will try and get better with age. That Chiefs rookie defensive back class from last season has just a chance to go down as one of the overall greatest defensive drafts in not just Chiefs history, but NFL history. And it sometimes feels crazy to say, but it's like Kent and I talked about back at the bottom of the noon hour. You have Trent McDuffie, starter stud. And it's just defensive backs here. Joshua Williams, legit contributor from the 4th round. Brian Cook, depending on what he does this year and how much he can step up, that's a starting safety in the 2nd round. Jalen Watson, competent corner, 7th round, was a starter last season. And now Najee Johnson's getting raves too, where he might take some legit snaps this year. That is 5 defensive backs in one draft that the Chiefs were able to find, develop, identify, and make better. That is a ridiculous hit rate for the Chiefs. And they have really, and maybe next week I'll convince Jay to have us take a deeper dive into this. The Chiefs have really found a way to identify and develop cornerback talent. And this is even also like a cross-sport application. There are teams in every sports league that seem to have a type of player they're really good at identifying and developing. Like in baseball, I make jokes all the time. The Guardians and the Rays develop pitching like nobody's business. They find a random dude who didn't look that great and develop into a great player. The Dodgers develop literally everybody into that. In the NFL, the Chiefs are, I have to say at this point, the premier organization in identifying and developing cornerback talent. Because look at every great corner they've had recently. L'Jarius Sneed, 4th round pick. He was a 4th rounder, and he's doing what he's doing right now. Travarius Ward, because like it or not, whatever you thought about Travarius, he was good enough to get a bag from San Francisco and was a good player. That was a 7th round, that was a flyer trade from the Texans. Like, identifying and developing talent in the cornerback room is what they do. They, for the first time, really took a lot of capital when they drafted Trent McDuffie in the first round last year. And that was the first real time they were like, hey, we're going to actually invest something big in this. But it's because they also, again, identified how good his traits are and what they wanted him to be. That is such a great skill that this Chiefs organization has that I think is incredibly valuable. And is part of the reason why, as much as I like L'Jarius Sneed, I think his versatility and I think things he provides to the defense are important and reasons to re-sign him and reasons to give him an extension. I would not blame the Chiefs for a second if they don't extend Sneed with just, hey, we have all these hits on young corners recently. They're all cost controlled really well for several years. Let's just either trade Sneed for something at the NFL trade deadline, which I don't know if they will, or honestly just let him play out the year and get to free agency. And if you guys can strike a deal that works for both sides and he comes back, great. And if not, you say happy trails, best of luck. We appreciate everything you did. And you roll with McDuffie and Watson and Williams and now Najee Johnson. Nick Jones has been receiving good reviews in camp. If Nick Jones becomes anything by next year, or even the year after, I'll give him that too. That would be 3 7th-round corners in the past 2 drafts. The Chiefs would have drafted, identified, and developed into competent NFL players. That is also, saying Najee Johnson finishes taking that step this year with the good reviews he's been getting in training camp. That is just, it's impressive. And it speaks to a very good front office that the Chiefs have, a very good player personnel department that the Chiefs have, and all things they're able to do to identify and build upon talent when they can find it in the draft. And that's what good teams do with their continued success is, since you can't pay everybody, you need cheap young talent to fill out your roster and be helpful to you to win while you have players with big cap hits. And the Chiefs finding that in guys like George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Brian Cook on the defensive side, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice on the offensive side as second-round picks, Isaiah Pacheco as a 7th-rounder. Finding that and identifying that is what great teams need to do to continue to build upon their long runs and to try and create that dynasty that everyone wants to create. Every team in the NFL wants to find a way to create a dynasty and create this long-lasting pillar of success. The Chiefs want to do that. The Chiefs feel like they potentially are on the cusp of that, particularly if they can not just reach, but win the Super Bowl this year and become the first team to go back-to-back since the Patriots at the beginning of the 2000s. But you do that, and you can only do that with successful, intelligent drafting. And man, have the Chiefs really found a way to do that in this day and age under Brett Veach and all that great player personnel department. It is just fantastic to see. The defensive backs are the cornerstone of that right now, and the biggest things you can turn to for how great that's been. So it's great to see with Brian Cook specifically. I'm excited to see what he does in year 2 as a full-time starter, filling in now for the departed Juan Thornhill. We're going to take a timeout here on Mike Dev. When we come back, it's time for On Second Thought. Up, Jake and I's Friday staple, where we often take a look back at something we said earlier this week, either because we were just flat out wrong or because we want to revise some of our statements. For me, it's more of a revision than anything else. When Jake and I first broke down the Kadarius Toney news on Friday afternoon after his injury, I was immediately of the camp, more on Friday and more on Tuesday as well. I was in the camp of try and get him back a little quicker. You know, do what you could to get him back by week 1. That's a good spot for him. Let's get him rolling. And Jake brought up the idea of, what if you intentionally held him out? What if you intentionally kept it slower? What if you didn't really try to bring him back until October and later in the year for the back half of the season and the playoff run? Treat him almost like you treat Jerick McKinnon and try and protect him from the fact that the body a little bit more fragile, more susceptible to injury. So if you manage the snap count, put him on, kind of a pitch count, then you can get the most out of him when you need to and can have him available for the biggest games of the year. And at first I was like, fine, whatever. I don't know if you really need to do that. And the more I've thought about it, though, I think I've moved fully to Jake's camp of that might be the best move. You don't need Kadarius Toney week 1. You can beat the Lions without Kadarius Toney. The Chiefs might put up 40 because that defense is not good. At least wasn't good last year. Maybe they've gotten better. Who knows? They've signed some nice players. We'll have to see what it looks like. But overall, it's a question of when is he needed most? Because as we've said numerous times, the regular season is a means to an end for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what it is. The regular season only exists to get the Chiefs to the playoffs, so therefore they can try and win a championship. Their wins in the regular season matter as much to amount to what seed do they get in the playoffs. That's what the regular season is. So in that case, if you can survive the first 5 to 6 weeks, which Jake and I have gone through it, those first 6 weeks are against very beatable teams. If you can go through those first 6 weeks or more without Toney, the optics will be, oh goodness, he's hurt. He can't play a full season. Oh my God, all that stuff. Whereas in reality, it's similar to Jerick McKinnon of just, we're not putting that bullet in the chamber until we know we need it. And that kind of thought process and that kind of maneuvering and situation with the Chiefs and Kadarius Toney is something I think I can very much get behind and more realize as a plausible strategy and maybe one that the Chiefs should really try and consider going forward. I don't know if that's what they will do. I mean, a lot of times, especially in the NFL, you're always trying to get guys back, ASAP. And especially for younger players, you want them back kind of as soon as you can. And at least in the lineup, you don't want to hold them out for more time than need be if you don't have to. Jerick McKinnon's kind of been the only guy the Chiefs kind of used cautiously early on, but that's, an older guy, veteran running back. It's different. You can treat veterans a little differently. Young guys, you want to keep them playing. You want to keep them ingrained. You want to keep them doing stuff. Plus, Toney's still trying to learn the offense and things like that. The more reps he get usually is the better. But overall, I do think there is some benefit if you are Kansas City of considering what you could do to protect him. Because at some point you have to realize this guy might not be an every week player because of his injury history, or we can't use him as consistently as we would like to because of either his injury history or other things. And so with that, at that point, you maybe then have to consider alternative methods of deployment and alternative methods of use. You know, if you are Kansas City, you'd like to not have to do that because with Kadarius Toney's skill set and the talents he has and the things he has shown, he is a guy you would like to be on the field as much as possible. Be on the field constantly and consistently so that way you can really try and operate your offense at a max potential. But at that same token, if it is better for his health and when you can have him in the biggest moments to monitor his snap count, to limit his snap count early on in the year, that might actually be the proper move because Kadarius Toney is infinitely more valuable to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game than he is week 3 against the Chicago Bears. You know, it's vastly different, and it creates a different situation and a different set of circumstances. So that's where, you know, I've moved into Jake's camp a little bit. I've moved to that side of should you maybe treat him with some kid gloves for a little while, and maybe you next season differently or other times differently or things like that. You try and work on things in other off seasons as you try and help him learn more about what his body needs and find ways to work through some of his injury prone nature and injury history and things like that. But for this season specifically, I think maybe holding him out a little bit longer, giving him some extra rest, not really trying to fully deploy him until the back half of the season, I think that might be overall the best thing the Chiefs could do for themselves going forward this season, which could set them up for more success in the playoffs and their goal ultimately to win back-to-back Lombardi trophies. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the Royals and Twins series and look at a little bit of an update on the MLB trade deadline. We are definitely looking forward to the weekend here on Mic'd Up as we move to wrap up today's edition of the show. Thank you, as always, for joining me on this lovely Friday afternoon. I say lovely again. It is 101 degrees without even the feels like temp outside. So I don't know if I can truly call this day lovely. The lovely part is I'm getting to talk sports with all of you, and you all are getting, we can all, interact together and participate in conversation and dialogue. That's the nice part of today. It really is. How we're going to wrap up the show today, though. Royals and Twins. And I know the Royals are definitely not a fun way to try and end this week's set of programming of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. But the Royals are playing. We do have to point that out. You can't listen to them tonight here on 580 WIBW, the sports voice of Kansas, as the Royals and Twins begin their 3-game series. It is a 7:10 first pitch, 6:30 pregame right here on the sports voice of Kansas. So Dan will have you from 3 to 6. It'll be a little 580 Sports Talk overtime from 6 to 6:30. And then Minnesota and the Royals will get at it at 7:10. They will then go at it tomorrow afternoon with a 6:10 first pitch on Saturday, the proper first pitch. 6:10, that should be your first pitch. And then there'll be a 1:10 first pitch coming up on Sunday. Your pitching matchups this weekend. Tonight, it is Brady Singer versus Sonny Gray. Tomorrow, it is Jordan Lyles versus Bailey Ober. And then on Sunday, Ryan Yarborough will take on Kenta Maeda. So tonight's like the only game worth really paying attention to see if Brady Singer can keep up his recent hot streak. Brady has been pitching really well as of late, enough so that I've been fully sucked back in on the maybe try and make Brady Singer an actual starter guy. I still don't know how I fully feel about that. I don't know if he really can be a full-time starter for you. I'm still hesitant. He leads the team in wins with 6, like by a mile, by like double the next starter. Brad Keller had 3 wins. That feels weird still. Daniel Lynch has 3 wins. They're both on the injured list still. Zach Greinke has 1 win. Jordan Lyles has 1 win. Ryan Yarborough in his limited starts has 3 wins as well. Brady Singer in his 20 starts has 6 wins this season. As always, though, wins for pitchers, second most useless stat in baseball. But overall, Brady Singer has been pitching well as of late, particularly like this month outside of a really bad start against Cleveland. We're going to ignore the Cleveland start. 6 innings, 2 runs against the Yankees. That's a good start. 8 innings, 4 runs against Tampa Bay in a win is a good start. He gave you 8 innings, 4 runs in a day. The offense was cooking well. And remember, that start, he had 7 shutout innings. All 4 of those runs came quickly in the 8th before he was finally able to regain a little bit of control. And then against the Dodgers back on July 2nd, he went 7 innings with 1 run. The one bad start in there is against Cleveland when he went 5 innings, gave 6 runs on 13 hits. But even before that, he had 6 shutout innings against the Guardians. Overall, since June, we're going to take this since June for Brady Singer. He's 3-4 as far as decisions go, with a 3.98 ERA. 41 strikeouts in 54 1/3 innings is not exactly what you want. But an ERA of 3.98 in the past 2 months, essentially. I mean, you take that. That's an ERA of basically 4. 3.98, we're calling that 4. But given what the Royals have dealt with pitching, I've often said, if what I saw from Brady Singer last year, I think is the ceiling. What we've seen from him in like 2020 and 2021 is the floor. His truth is somewhere in between. I really feel Brady Singer as a starting pitcher, his truth is probably somewhere around a 4 to 4.5 ERA guy, which is good enough for a number 4, number 5 starter. And that's what he's been the past 2 months. I brought up this number a lot. The stat of FIP, fielding independent pitching. It is it's basically an ERA-esque stat. It's like ERA, but it takes into account only the things you can control. Home runs, strikeouts, walks. That's what it takes into account. Things that you yourself have all the control over as a pitcher. If your FIP is higher than your ERA, you've had issues giving up home runs and walks and things like that. And often, as I sometimes call it, you've maybe gotten a little lucky if your FIP is higher than your ERA, because it means your actual results of your ERA have been a little bit better than maybe they should have been. And as I've also often said, if your ERA is higher than your FIP, there is a level of unluckiness you have gotten in this season. Brady Singer's ERA is down to 5.55. Still not great. His FIP is 4.20. That tells me if you balance that out more, Brady Singer should be better than he's been this season, and we're seeing that at times. Against the Yankees, we finally saw him get his strikeouts back, as he had 9 strikeouts in 6 innings. That is what we need to see from Brady Singer. But overall, he is the one it is most interesting to watch pitch. So tonight's game is the one I would say has the most intrigue. Tomorrow, it's Jordan Lyles. I mean, that's whatever. Like, my sicko self is going to watch it because I have a problem. Like, I have an issue. I don't blame any of you for not watching Jordan Lyles pitch tomorrow, because Jordan Lyles' only usefulness is if he pitches well and finds a way for the Royals to make some team take him. The problem is, if some team does take him, the Royals will probably have to pay down the contract. So you're not likely, saving yourself anything financially. You just might be able to get some sort of prospects and get him off your team. Overall, it's not that great, though. And then Ryan Yarbrough goes on Sunday. I will say, I am intrigued for that start. Because if Ryan Yarbrough pitches well again, you're 2 days before the trade deadline, teams start getting more desperate. I am of the belief, I'm not saying he will get moved, but I really think there might be a market for Ryan Yarbrough. He's a swing pitcher. He can be both a starter and a reliever, has a vast experience in both. That's beneficial to any team. He's pitched well as of late. You like the positive momentum. He's a veteran experience, so you like the veteran presence. And he is dirt cheap. Like, I am confident. I think the rest of the way, a team maybe has to pay $1 million. His contract this year was $3 million for the season. He might have $1 million to $1.5 million left when you trade. So that is dirt cheap for an acquiring team to have to owe a guy. The lack of velocity and the fact that he has to be a very, very much a crafty lefty does not make it the most attractive option. The fact that he's a rental does not make it the most attractive option, because teams know they're only getting him for a stretch run. But there are contenders out there who need pitching. And I think someone out there could use Ryan Yarbrough. I really do. I don't know if the Royals will actually do it. I don't know if anyone's going to make a phone call about him. But I think there is a potential for that to happen. I don't know what it is, but we will see. Speaking of which, with the trades at least, I want to give some trade deadline updates, because the Chicago White Sox, folks, it's a fire sale. It is a fire sale on the south side of Chicago. First things first, a deal has been agreed to. We will wait for the official terms to come out, but the Chicago White Sox have traded, first things first, Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly. I teased this at the top of the 2 o'clock hour that there had been tentative agreements that they were close. It has been made official. Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly are headed to the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Chicago White Sox will receive Nick Nastrini, a minor league starter, and Jordan Ledger, a minor league reliever, along with outfielder Trace Thompson as return for Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly. That's a nice return for the White Sox. Then also, this is just now coming in from Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. The Astros are in the process, nothing's been done yet, but are in the process of acquiring reliever Kendall Graveman from the Chicago White Sox. They are in an agreement in principle. The finer points of that deal are still being fleshed out, but Kendall Graveman going back to Houston, that is currently on the tables. The White Sox are fully in a fire sale mode. With that as well, there are two pieces of Royals news I want to get to beyond the series tonight. First things first, the Royals have made a roster move. Nick Prado, or if you play MLB The Show and listen to Book Shambi, Nick Prado, you are a very expensive gaming company with an ability to record lines and no pronunciation guides. How do they get that wrong? It still drives me crazy. Nick Prado is going to the 10-day injured list, retroactive to July 27th with a left groin strain. So Prado is going to the IL. Samad Taylor has been recalled from AAA Omaha. So Samad Taylor has rejoined the team. And with that as well, we do have the lineup for the Kansas City Royals tonight. Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., MJ Melendez at the top of the order, and third base for Garcia, short for Witt Jr., left field for MJ Melendez. Salvador Perez is playing first base tonight. Salvador Perez at first. Let's get wild. Freddie Fermin is catching. Michael Massey is your DH. Kyle Isbell in center. Drew Waters is in right. And Nicky Lopez at second base. That is your lineup for the Royals. Man, Salvador Perez at first base. Let's get buck wild. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with the mic drop. Wrapping up this week of 5-8 of Mic'd Up. 5-8 Sports Talk coming up next. Wrapping up this week of Mic'd Up with the mic drop. From a Royals perspective, I think we're about to start seeing a lot of Salvador Perez at first base the next week. Nick Prado is hurt. Vinny Pasquantino is hurt. Sal can play first. You have three potential first basemen on this roster. Nicky Lopez, Matt Duffy, and Salvador Perez. It's not ideal, but folks, it is wild. And honestly, let's try it. Let's get crazy. It makes something about the Royal season somewhat interesting. Thank you all for joining me this week on Mic'd Up. It was a heavy just me week, and I appreciate all of you for being a part of this and being part of this show. We very much appreciate and cannot, as always, express so much of our gratitude to all of you listening. Have a great weekend, everybody. Please, if you're outside, stay hydrated, stay cool. It's going to be hot as ever living everything out here the rest of the week. So please stay cool. Coming up next, 580 Sports Talk with Dan Lucero. We'll talk to you next week.